funsies.
Sure.
No, I was just noticing.
You want me to back you up?
Go ahead and do the local. I edit 3 podcasts on my own, so I usually just use the Zoom, but yeah, you never know. So
all right, I'll start my local then.
It's I'm wildly editing all the time. But yeah, actually I was just thinking that's funny because the last time we talked to you was when your hair looked like that last time.
Wow. So at least I mean that's a minimum of 2 years at least, yeah.
Yeah, it was right when COVID was hitting, because I think you guys had just locked down, and we never quite completely locked down Japan, but we are still all wearing masks like everywhere. The government minister said just this Monday, you probably don't need to wear them outside. So
I just came back from, so like 3 weeks ago when I got my haircut, I came back from a wedding, and like no one in Atlanta airport.
Oh, right, Atlanta,
mask, which was crazy.
Busiest in the world.
No one in the wedding. Yeah, so it was nuts. Yeah, it's still a little choppy though.
Yeah, well,
every once in a while.
Work through it. Worst thing is we'll just start, riffing a little bit if we need to fill in a bit of gap. So I listened to your Patreon, so I already know about your internet shop anyway.
It's so frustrating. There's not really much I can do because I can't go to another provider. That's the thing. It's like Cox here, and from the South, you probably already know this, but I can't switch over to AT&T because they don't service this area. So unless you have the service provider that's that has quality quality equipment and quality service, there's not much I can do. Even John's like, well, what if we just what if Roddenberry like helped you with that? I'm like, there's nothing to help. Right? I mean, I have crappy coaxial. There's not much I can do about it.
Yeah, there's we had my wife's family house is in the countryside, and we kind of wanted to move there when we came back, right, to Japan, but we were like, can we get internet there? And the service people were like, it's going to cost you like something like $50,000 because we're going to have to build the infrastructure to put it there.
Wow.
So we just use cellular when we're there. That's where my daughter doesn't like going up there so much anymore, because it doesn't have good internet. So 12 years old, you want your internet, I guess.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. I mean, like today the internet went down this morning, and they were doing some service on my app. I was able to get updates, and it was just weird because like all of our TVs are tied into internet connection. So when we weren't, watching TV, I was really apologetic. I'm like, there's nothing I can do. And I was just like, wow, so much of our lives are tied into, quality Wi-Fi connection.
About 5 years ago, I had this thing where now there's now we have proper Wi-Fi here, but a few years ago we didn't. So when I wanted to download stuff, I'd like take my laptop, take it downstairs, plug it in, and then download stuff I needed, then come back up, because I was running my laptop off of cellular data. So, you don't get that much doing that.
Right. I mean, if this really kind of like becomes an issue, I mean, the other thing I can do is just for recording, I'll probably have to like hardwire or find a way to get to a landline or snake a landline down to my studio, because I like my studio, but if I'm dropping off connections and stuff like that, I mean, like that's not good.
Yeah, my studio is a bit of a joke. That's why I'm rocking the blazer. But
it looks good. I mean, you can dress up a Hawaiian shirt with just like one jacket. It's pretty weird, right?
I don't think I'll wear it to work, but
no. I mean, that's all I did when I was in California. Like I brought a bunch of Hawaiian shirts and like one jacket. And like if I had to go out or like to a bar or out to dinner, I just threw on a jacket.
Yeah, I used to have something like 10 Hawaiian shirts, but I think I'm down to 4. A few years ago, Uniqlo, I think you have them in America a little bit, but they had a nice Hawaiian shirt collection for relatively cheap. I mean, obviously not like the straight up authentic. All right, that was my tube actually going out a little bit, but that should be fine.
Yeah, I did lost it for a second. So what were you saying?
I was saying that the Uniqlo, the Japanese clothing store, I think you have a few in America, but about 3 or 4 years ago, they had a really nice Hawaiian shirt collection. So, we had a trip down. Where were we going? Okinawa. We were going to Okinawa, but it was like late October, so I just didn't know how to dress. So I've got this Doctor Who reject picture from the airport where I'm wearing like a hunting cap, like a Hawaiian shirt, like a purple plaid over that. So I just look completely ridiculous. Doctor Who reject.
It's perfect. It's perfect if if you can pull that off, be part of like the Doctor Who aesthetic. Amen.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
it works,
yeah.
it works.
I just got called out on it. It was great. Oh yeah, you might have seen on the Patreon the sword stuff. I ended up in the kendo store. My daughters decided to do kendo, so we got some swords people around here now.
Nice. Yeah, it's a great art. I wanted to get into that out here in Gainesville because there, interestingly enough, it may be because it's a college town. There are a lot of like varieties of different martial arts, that you can try. But I got this really interesting email. I reached out to a local club. Got 2 or 3 days later, I said, hi, I'm from California. I'm transplanted here to Gainesville. I'm taking care of my mother-in-law, but I'm looking for a club to train in. And I got like the most like right-wing response from the email, like, glad you got out of Rainbow Land. I'm like, what is going on? And basically everything that you could possibly say that would insult somebody from being of the human race and from California, I got an email. I'm like, okay, so I guess I'm not showing up to practice with you then. I'll find my own way. It was the strangest thing. I'm like, guy, I haven't even stepped like foot one into your studio and you're already like not putting down a good vibe at all.
Yeah, since I with the Twilight Zone one and some other podcasts, sometimes I call people and like actually Stargate version 1 was going to be someone that was going to go on about like Anunnaki or something. So occasionally you talk to people like that and suddenly it's like, well, of course this, and you're like, no, not of course that. So
what is Anunnaki?
I'll talk about on the podcast a little bit. So I guess I'll be the guy that does that. So
all right. I'll get an education. I watched my 15th anniversary edition, which is fantastic. If you don't have that one, it's like the one to collect because it has like the most amount of special features, and they say that it's the best Blu-ray transfer so far. There wasn't a 25th anniversary release, which would have come out, let's see, 94. No. Yeah, there wasn't a
19. It'd be 19.
19.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a 25th anniversary release there, and there isn't talks of a 30, which I would love, but I don't know if we're going to get that. I did get this one really interesting German release though, which was cool because I have a region-free player, just for the like one additional special feature because I'm crazy like that. But it's such an interesting film. I have like I want to talk about or bring up like 3 ideas that I had, see what you guys think about it, that would basically kind of, at least for me, would just make the film a rounder film, like fill in some of the holes. Like basically one of the biggest things, I know I'm going to jump in, we'll cover this again, but
okay.
Why the hell is Jack O'Neill going on the mission to begin with?
I guess he's touch suicidal. I don't know. I was looking at the wiki just before coming on, and it was sort of like he's going because he knows he's not coming back. Hold on, I'm going to grab my iPad and just make sure I don't have a connection issue from Luke or something.
Sure.
I woke up this morning having not properly charged my iPad.
Uh-oh.
We're at 85 now. We're okay.
Oh, perfect.
Up here is a message of some kind. Oh, he mixed up his days. So,
oh no.
Let's see. I know he's seen it multiple times. Nerp now. Tomorrow's one of my weirder ones where I'm talking to someone about like the esoteric elements of like early Disney films. So
like which ones?
We're doing Snow White tomorrow. So for example, one of his ideas is that the 7 dwarves like are like elementals, that mine things like materials from the ground, and they don't become fully conscious until Snow White, like the human consciousness comes. And Oh, the one that really got me. I will talk about it with him tomorrow. But the idea that Snow White singing at the beginning of the movie at the wishing well
Mhm.
is her casting a spell for the first time, and it
Oh,
works so well that when the prince instantly appears after she's cast the spell, she runs away because it all
huh.
never made sense, right? She's like, I want a prince. Prince shows up, she runs away. But it's like,
Right.
no, she cast the spell and freaked out because it worked so well.
Is that someday my prince will come? Someday my
That's that.
prince will come.
That's later actually. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, she sings that to the dwarves.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I don't love it in the movie, so I had to follow it up with this last night, of course.
Nice.
I
There you
do
go.
prefer Coltrane and Miles doing that song.
Dude, I can't believe like how trashed your fingers get from playing the bass.
Oh, I that to be honest, that one's from several months ago because I played with a pick for years, and then I got like
Mhm.
a Jacko copy bass, a Jacko Pastorius bass. It's fretless, and you play a fretless with your fingers. So I just like I had this
Oh,
progression of photos, like just like I didn't even show you the goriest one.
yeah, that's nasty. I was just like, wow, because I know because like Getty doesn't use a pick. At least he doesn't use a pick from like the live shows that I've seen him because he just basically just two fingers that thing, and just braces his thumb, against the on the bass and just kind of plucks. But he's been playing it for so long. I mean, you got to figure, just the level of callus, skin that he has on his fingers is probably really thick.
Yeah, that was me coming off of having uh, played with a pick for probably like 10 years because I was
Mm,
trying to do lots of McCartney style bass. He does use a pick, so but
gotcha.
but yeah, playing the album, you play the first Tom Sawyer and Red. Oh God, was it Red Bart? You could say
Barchetta.
it. Yes, thank you. That word's too difficult for me.
Yeah.
That's fun. That's a good time. Then you get to XYZ and you're like, oh my God.
Bum, ba, bum, bum, bum. Yeah, because you're
Yeah,
like basically banging, like you're like you're thumping, bam, 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 bam.
and that
And
is
then
the
that,
first
yeah,
thing.
because the bass line on that dun 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 dun.
Mm.
Yeah,
So
that's
it
right.
was weird that once I got the fretless, get I guess yeah, it makes sense he doesn't play with a pick because his bass lines and Flea's bass lines suddenly became like I know they both play fretted basses, but for me, for whatever reason, once I got my hands on a fretless, I'm like, oh, I can play this stuff now.
Okay.
Which might be because my first instrument's like cello. So
Ah, okay.
in the Jacko documentary, he's sort of like, if you really want to play a fretless bass, you need to have the intonation of a cellist. I'm like, oh, covered.
Nice. Okay.
But
Yeah, I'm glad your fingers healed up or have
yeah,
healed up.
well, they're calloused.
All right.
They've got yeah, my I actually have trouble using touchscreens on phones and stuff sometimes because of the calluses.
Oh, is that? Oh, so you'll make the perfect hitman. No fingerprints, right?
Yeah, right, really. So
Able to
because
print you.
for the past couple of years I've gotten back to playing cello a lot too, so it's both hands are like fully callous now.
Oh, well,
'Cause you got
you
the
suffer
high.
for your art, man. Right?
Right, right. Oh yeah, as a musician, it's like, hey, that's great.
Yeah.
Luke is still getting his connection. He's getting signed in. He's got his computer like held together by like this the screen and the body are like have hinges connected to the back. So what's like
Holding
I don't know. Yeah, it's so
thoughts
hard
and
to get a new.
prayers.
Yeah, yes, really. It's so hard to get a new computer. Like I actually have a brand new computer in my closet here with Windows 11. I'm running this. Whoops, there goes my oops. I'm
Oh
running
no.
this Windows 7 12-year-old laptop just because it's set up. I mean, yeah, that's why I don't have a background though. Apparently, if you have Windows 7, you cannot do that.
Is that right? And can run. It can still run Zoom. Huh?
Yeah, it runs Zoom. Although it stays running when I turn it off, I like have to manually go in and turn it off, like from the whatever it's called,
Power
the task
down.
manager. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so funny.
Oh yeah, there's
Uh,
lots of horrible impractical things with this computer, but it's just everything's set up for sound. I've got a sound card plugged into the side, going to a tube preamp, which is what I'm talking to you through. That's why I was having trouble with earlier. I just accidentally kicked that. So
I gotcha. I
so
gotcha.
it's all scotch tape and such.
Well, like in like TV production, it's like they don't really care about like what's outside, the camera frame. They just care about what's inside the camera frame.
I remember seeing early, maybe about June 2020, the Simpsons shot of their Zoom space, and then everything around is just messy apocalypse. So I mean
Oh
that's
yeah.
pretty much, yeah. If I turn the camera this way, it certainly doesn't look like I'm very organized.
Sometimes I'm like I watch, like, you know, news shows and stuff like that, and they'll bring in like pundits and stuff like that, and they'll have like people in the back, their backgrounds are all curated, and sometimes they're not, and you're just like, you guys know you're on TV, right? You know, you might want to like take a couple of those things off the background. There's one guy though, it's hilarious. I mean, he's really good pundit, but in like the background, he has like all these Funko Pops, like, you know, John Stewart, Green Lantern, and like Firestorm, you know, like like, dude, I was like, I'm glad you're like a major geek, man, but you know, you're on like CNN Politico or something like that. You know, you might want to take those off, make yourself a little bit more serious looking. I don't know.
I don't have too much geek around here. Mostly it's actually Star Wars stuff, right? Yeah. Oh, got her.
Hey, nice.
Someone's got to
Good.
have her, right? They certainly
Right.
didn't have her in the third movie.
True enough. We there's a lightsaber group that I used to belong to out in Southern California, and we all did a GoFundMe to basically create like the Rose Tico lightsaber, you know, for her, just because she did, what do they say? She got done wrong.
Yeah. That's the movie that listened to the internet, which is not necessarily a good one. That's what we've been saying. That's the first one we're gonna have to like go back and do because we weren't hard enough on it the first time.
Yeah, and it's like you're right. Like the reaction for, you know, in that whole movie, you know, that whole movie extension was just, it was so hard pivoting like to social media, which is kind of like why I like that like series, like, you know, for better or worse, you know, series that are on streaming, they're canned. All right. So as soon as they launch, they're locked. You know, there's no going back, there's no mid-network break, there's no adjusting on the fly, there's no nothing. It's like, you know, you can your 10 episodes, you release them, that's it. Right. People are like, you know, why can't Picard make adjustments? Because it's done, dude. These people have moved, you know, and unless you're a next generation cast member, most of those people have already moved on. You know, same thing with you know, like the Prodigy cast, you know, they're all the voice acting's locked in. Now they're just in the post-production. Like these people, as soon as they're done, their call sheet is empty and they're moving on to the next gig. So
Sorry, I'm looking at my Facebook. He's just having a touch of, I'm perfectly happy to chat a bit, but yeah, he's having a touch of connections issues on his side too. So here he goes. Great.
Oh.
Okay. He doesn't want to know what we're talking about. So we basically decide The Last Jedi is the last of the Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, there's I guess the cover, maybe it was a Vanity Fair cover, something like that, like showing like the next like 4 series that are coming out. I think it was like Mandalorian, Obi-Wan. I can't even keep up with all of them. And I'm like, you know what? I love Star Wars. I grew up with Star Wars. Star Wars is like brought me to the dance. I just can't keep up with it all. And I said, you know what? I'm fine with that. I am completely 100% fine with that. If I haven't seen any Marvel series on Disney, not because I don't want to, I just don't care.
Same here. I did watch WandaVision. It's just so trippy. I was like, I have to see the trippiness, but everything else is like, it's great. Don't have time for it.
Yeah. And you know, people are like, how come you haven't watched it yet? I'm like, cause I just didn't, you know, and like, sorry, I'll go back and watch 8 seasons of Old Magnum, like in a heartbeat, but for the new shows, just not into, I'm not invested, man. You know, like, and there's nothing in there that makes me invested. Okay. So, well, here's the truth though. You know, my brother showed me, I think, an episode, like the first episode of Loki. I don't know if you guys have seen it.
I saw the first episode of Loki.
Yeah. So what's his name? The guy who plays Rutherford in Lower Decks, Eugene Cordero. You know, he's in Loki. And he's rolling around this cart. And Loki has the Tesseract with him because he got that from Endgame, right? When he broke free. And he had that with him. And then this character, Eugene Cordero's character, he picks it up, looks at it, throws it in a box of junk with other Infinity Stones. I'm like, so this is what we've reduced this to, you know, and it like just a joke, right? I'm like, no thanks, I don't need that, I'm done. Like I liked my Endgame ending on the whole thing with the sacrifice, with Cap like returning the stones, all that kind of shit. I'm like, I'm good there. I'm good there.
Endgame was an ending. Luke, you're on that page except for Spider-Man, I believe.
I mean, I'm still watching everything, but yeah, I was pretty much done after Endgame. I don't watch the TV. I don't watch the TV stuff either, but I've kept up with the films.
I really do want to watch No Way Home, but I know this is not the topic. But anyway, Luke, good to see you.
Hello, yeah, sorry, I thought this was tomorrow, so it took 10 minutes for my computer to turn on.
No worries. But I told my brother, I'm like, you know what? I really want the Spider-Man movies to actually feature Spider-Man as a character that doesn't need support. Every single Spider-Man movie that's come out has been and also ran for another character's background story. Right. So in the first one, is Iron Man. The second one is Iron Man, but dead. And the third one is Doctor Strange. Right. So he never really has like just been like, I'm Spider-Man and no other superheroes that have been bigger than me are in this movie. Just me. Right. And even in No Way Home, it's like no other superheroes aside from me or any other versions of me. Just me. Right.
Oh yeah, you will not. Yeah, that doesn't happen.
Right. So it's like let Tom Holland stand on his own. He's good enough. Right.
I guess we should get rolling on this. Norm, just to let you know, we tend to keep our language classy with guests, but you can drop F-bombs. We don't care.
I don't. I usually don't unless John's around.
Yeah.
And it's usually at him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The horrible ones are when Luke and I get on the side of a mountain at a temple doing the podcast by ourselves, and then the language becomes horrible.
No, I run clean, so you guys don't have to worry about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Luke, you need a year. You know the year.
I got this one ready.
Yeah, you're on this one. Okay. Let's give 5 seconds of silence just so I can spot it, and we'll go.
In the year 2570 BC, the human beings completed construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Or did they?
Did you say the Greek Pyramid of Giza?
I said the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Oh, good. Okay, I heard it wrong.
Yeah, the pyramids and the Sphinx, they're in Greece, right?
Yeah, that's right. Because that's what Americans believe, at least. Yes. Yeah, okay, that's a good year to go for, because 1994 is seared to my brain on today's movie, Stargate. This is Matt here.
This is Luke.
This is the Sci-Fi Sanctuary. Luke, you live near a Stargate.
I do live near a Stargate, yeah.
And
I tried jumping through it, but must not have been turned on.
What was it you were expecting to end up in your hometown?
Well, there's another very similar big round stone art piece near where I grew up. So I figured it'd be pretty cool if I could just teleport back and forth between Japan and the UK.
Anyway, the approach to this film, and I'll be talking whack, possibly false ancient history stuff somewhere along the line. But what we're kind of looking for today is an interesting approach to fandom, because we're all coming to Stargate from pretty different places. So first, let's bring in our guest. He's from the Mission Log podcast, talking about every episode of Star Trek ever over a long period of time. Hello, Norman Lau.
Hey, everyone. Hey, Matthew. Hey, Luke. Thanks for having me back. I'm glad to be here. And don't worry, my chevrons are locked, but I'm not leaving yet. So we're good there.
You got the sequence wrong, Luke. That's the problem. If you got the sequence, you would have been there. But yeah, I feel like we're all coming from very different fandom approaches to this. So Luke, you were telling me you're actually this movie guy. This movie is your thing, right?
Yeah, like I did watch a fair amount of SG1 and stuff, mostly because my dad was really into it. But I've always been a big fan of the film specifically. I mean, I guess I'm just a Roland Emmerich fan.
So you're talking like, Universal Soldier, this, ID4, Godzilla.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I just like real cheesy, the good guys win spectacle. Sometimes that's enough for me.
Okay, because I came into Stargate like as backwards as possible. My dad and I went and saw this probably opening weekend. This is when I just saw things on opening weekend, and I don't think we were blown away. We were just like, that was a movie, cool. But yeah, my roommate just after university was really into SG1, so maybe it was 2007, 2008. It's when Borders Books was going out of business in America.
Oh.
And yes,
I love that store.
And I got the first season of SG1. And I think 2007 was just exactly the wrong time to start to watch SG1, because it had clearly dated by that point, but it hadn't like turned back around into being like the cool kind of dated. It just didn't look right. So fast forward a few years later, and it's probably a Black Friday sale. Battlestar's just ended, and I see Universe is like, $10 for the Blu-ray. So I watch Universe first. I like Robert Carlyle. That was my other hook. And then from that, another Black Friday sale, I got the complete set of Atlantis. I watched all of Atlantis. I liked it. That was kind of my, I've seen too much Next Gen, so now I'm watching Atlantis. And I still haven't seen SG1. So I will get, I think now I get where I can watch it now and enjoy it. The other thing was, it was right when the TVs had all gone widescreen, and here I am watching like a standard frame thing, which my TV now will stretch it out to the widescreen, which is fake. But yeah, I think I'm ready for it. But 15 years ago, it was a bad place for SG1. So Norm, I think you kind of recently got into the SG1 Real House, if I'm seeing it correctly.
Yeah, this for SG1, I'm a little bit more recent, but for Stargate, I was there, very much like Luke, you were there in 1994. So I remember the 1990s it was an interesting decade of kind of like this lull in like sci-fi fantasy, franchises. There were a lot of like really good action films, there were a lot of really good action dramas, romantic comedies, and rom-coms were kind of like on the rise. But there was this really interesting period where superhero movies were not great. I'm looking at you, Fantastic Four, both of them, and all of the, the attempts to do things like Mortal Kombat 2, I'm looking at you too, so science fiction, hard science fiction, of which this isn't, but I'm just going to say science fiction, was just kind of like in this null and void type of space. And what I liked about Stargate when I watched it, it was vanilla science fiction. It wasn't really offensive. It wasn't really memorable. It was just entertaining. And you could just go in there and, you pay your, I don't know what the ticket prices were back then in 1994, but I'd say like maybe $10. You get your popcorn, you get your soda, you escape for a couple hours or an hour and some, 40 something minutes, and then you're gone, you're done. And it's the interesting thing. It's like the rise of home video is like really where I think like Stargate kind of started to reintegrate its roots, like with the fandom, because we go into a video store and say like, I haven't seen that since the theaters. I'll go watch it again. And your 72 hours of rental time, you'll watch it maybe once or twice, and you'll kind of like fall in love with the movie, because again, there's nothing really wrong with the movie. It's entertaining, and that's it. There a couple things could be fixed to make it really, really great, but for the most part, it's a popcorn movie. And like, I agree with Luke, there's nothing wrong with just a really good popcorn movie. Doesn't have to change your life, right? And it doesn't have to make the lastingest impression, for good or ill. It just has to entertain. And I think that's good enough.
It's a very different movie, although I guess it's still kind of the desert. But I'm hearing your explanation there and kind of thinking like, gee, that's also the Casablanca explanation. But something extra happened there, I guess.
Well, in Casablanca, well, here's the thing. It's like I have this in Stargate. There are three things that I think, and I wanted to pitch these ideas to you guys to think. I think that this would make Stargate a far more memorable movie. Number one, first and foremost, it needs a proper villain. It really does. The biggest problem with Stargate is that you really don't care about why the heroes are going through the machinations that they're going through. Ra is a paper tiger. And the idea of Ra is great. The idea that he's an alien and he basically established like the mythology of like the Egyptian culture on Earth, et cetera, et cetera. If you've seen the film, if you've seen SG1, that goes way into Abydos and Apophis and the Goa'uld and all of that. But in the movie, Ra really does nothing except for look really, really cool. And Jay Davidson, much to his credit, looks fantastic in the role of Ra. But you just can't, John Champion has this great phrase. You can't have, especially the villain, you can't have a costume in search of a character. That's what Ra is. There's nothing to Ra that makes him threatening at all. And you only have to tweak one or two things with him and he would be amazing as a villain. And that's why I think that Stargate is kind of not so memorable.
Yeah, he comes into the film really late as well.
Yes, I feel like an hour into the film.
Yeah, he doesn't have much time. Like, they arrive, and then the problem at first is just, we don't know how to get back. If they'd made it that he'd deliberately taken the Stargate from them or something, like right from the start, there was a reason they're in jeopardy. But yeah, like you say, he just doesn't do a lot.
Right.
So yeah, that's definitely true.
I think that in the course of the story, we know that Jack O'Neill is suffering, this great suicidal depression because of what happened to his son. Then he creates this relationship with Skara, which goes further and further and further along into SG1, Alexis Cruz. So I was thinking that there was a scene, and a very telling scene, where the very first time that Jack and oh gosh, I forgot his name. It's so memorable. James Spader.
Oh, Daniel Jackson.
Daniel Jackson. So
I heard
Jack,
Michael Jackson when he first came on.
See, because I was always amused that it feels like the two main characters are called Jack Daniels and Daniel Jackson.
Right? I'm like, my brain short circuiting trying to figure out their guys' names. I should say, Richard Anderson and and Michael Shanks, those two guys. But anyway, so you have Jack and you have
Daniel.
And then they're about to attack Ra, and then Ra surrounds. He doesn't ask for this to happen. The children surround him by default, right? That was their kind of like pre-programmed action to protect their leader. So what if in some way Ra was the one who was stealing all the children from, I think it's the village is called Navada or Nagata. And that's what his big bad motivation is, to like brainwash the next generation of slaves, especially a hierarchy of slaves who become his Jaffa or his soldiers, because, the Horus and the Anubis soldiers have to come from somewhere. Why not the children? So having Skara in there and having that connection with Jack O'Neill, and maybe having Skara turn into kind of like his brainwashed bodyguard that he knows Jack would never fire on, that would have been a great like motivation for him to be a villain, and for have a buffer between him and Jack, where Jack eventually saves Skara, a la, I'll shoot you in the leg and you fall, then I'll kill Ra after that kind of thing, right? So there needs to be something in between the heroes and the villain that gives them both purpose. Because if you don't have a villain, you don't have heroes, right? That's the old saying. Your heroes are only as good as the villain that inspires them to do their great deeds. So if Ra's doing nothing, what are our heroes doing? Aside from just Jack is kind of the villain in this case.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. A very different character. I guess we should talk a little bit about the actors in that case, because that is such a contrast. Before I move too far off the ride, we'll just mention I was looking. I didn't know that Jay Davidson, made a big splash with the Crying Game. Decide I'm finished. They pretty much literally drove a truckload of money to his house to do this role. He did it, and then he was out, finished. No more credits. So I guess it's like, he made the most of his 15 minutes, made it into 30 minutes, really. So
at a bad payday, right?
Yeah. I was watching this last night, kind of thinking like how much of Kurt Russell's film career is informing Jack, because Jack is not likable in this movie. The show he is. Here, no, he's not likable at all. So how much are we supposed to be kind of channeling that we know Snake Pilson or I forgot his Big Trouble character, but
Jack Burton.
Thank you. Okay, you see, I forgot
Jack Burton, Jack O'Neill, Daniel Jackson, Jack Daniels Burton. It's all very confusing.
We're jacking, but I was like, I wonder how much you need to just have the Kurt Russell vibe to really enjoy his performance in this movie.
But I feel like he isn't necessarily meant to be the likable one, because you've got Daniel there as the sort of leading man, lovable guy. Like, he is meant to be this slightly dark enigma of a character who comes around at the end. Here, there is actually, because I always in my head go and watch this film expecting SG-1 O'Neill to show up, I forget what a character he is in this. And like, there is like a whole backstory, and he's quite a dark figure.
Yeah, and they do touch on this in SG-1, which is nice, because they continue the mythology of these characters. And it's funny too, because the Kurt Russell that you see, or the Jack O'Neill that you see at the very beginning of the movie, is rocking like the Wyatt Earp haircut from Tombstone. Also kind of like the Wyatt Earp tan. So it's kind of like he just basically rolled from Tombstone like into Stargate. But one thing that I saw another podcast or YouTuber say this about Kurt Russell, and this is very true. Kurt Russell is his characters are very egocentric and very bombastic and kind of braggadocious. That's what you expect from a Kurt Russell character. Your Jack Burton's, his character in Tango and Cash, maybe not so much in The Thing, but even, McMurphy or McReady, he's like a lot more memorable than, say, the strong and silent type. And Jack gets there kind of closer towards the end. He becomes a little bit more of what we expect, from Kurt Russell. But he was kind of like, riffing off of which did Soldier come before this or after this? Because it's kind of like he had the same haircut in both, right? He had that like ridiculously awesome flat top.
I can't quite remember because I saw this opening night, but I saw Soldier at the Dollar Theater, so
Okay.
it's hard to work out which one was first.
But I mean, he doesn't really play the silent, enigmatic type. I think, at least for me, well, it's always just kind of, he's always in your face. He's always kind of, again, just braggadocious and egocentric. But yeah, I don't know.
think he does play it well. It's just not necessarily what you want from your Kurt Russells.
Right. Totally. Yep.
Soldier was quite a few years later.
Okay. So
Oh,
he
okay.
rolled that haircut and that personality into Soldier. Right. Yeah.
I did just from looking at some of the making of stuff, it seems that the first scenes were the final scenes they filmed. So he probably did have that on-site filming location tan.
Oh yeah.
Maybe he filmed, Tombstone in the interim. I don't know. That was 93, I think, though. Yeah. Been a while since I saw that. But yeah, I guess I'm gonna having not seen that much SG1, I guess I do have to give a point to Richard Dean Anderson for the Colonel.
Yeah, and I know that RDA said in interviews about when they were romancing him for the character, he's like, I can't be Kurt Russell. I can't play an entire season of this guy just being tortured. That, first of all, that's not me, and second of all, that's going to be a really boring character to watch. For 22 some odd episodes. There's nowhere to go. So sure, does his O'Neill, with 2 L's, by the way, remember, 2 L's, does his O'Neill grow? Yeah, because he gives him room to grow. He has a sense of humor, but there are times where his RDA's Jack O'Neill still goes dark when he needs to go dark and access those emotions. But yeah, Stargate, the SG1 and the film, while they're similar in many respects, they also are like worlds apart. Pardon the pun. Stargate's apart in many respects.
Yeah, the extra L that he dropped, that was his baggage. So how about for Daniel Jackson? I again, I haven't seen that much SG1, but I kind of feel like with Michael Shanks and James Spader, I don't really know which one I prefer. But maybe you guys have a stronger opinion on that.
This is the one cast member as a kid I genuinely thought it was the same actor.
Maybe that's why I can't figure out which one I prefer. It is weird because I think at this point, and I guess this is basically almost James Spader's big budget lead, because he always seemed just about to break and never quite did. And then he just started doing like stuff like Secretary, which was awesome, but that wasn't going to get him, major roles so much.
And Robert California, right, in The Office.
That was fantastic. Yeah.
Shanks did such a great job at channeling James Spader, and I think that's much to his credit, and also kind of like much to the detriment of the character, that his Shanks's version of Daniel Jackson was essentially more of an extension of the movie character than RDA as Jack O'Neill. And I mean, right down to the haircut. I mean, they had the same kind of like long feathered haircut, had the same glasses, and they gave him the framework that Daniel Jackson was left in, at the end of Stargate. They gave him, there was Shaori, also played by a different actress. It wasn't Milia Avatal, it was a different actress. But, Skara was there, they're on Abydos. So Daniel Jackson coming into frame, you almost believe that it's James Spader coming back onto TV. And again, Michael Shanks, he is playing him. He's not playing Michael Shanks playing Daniel Jackson. He's playing Michael Shanks playing James Spader playing Daniel Jackson. So, but he does come into, he shakes that a little bit, later on in SG1, Luke, he cuts his hair, he drops his glasses from time. His glasses literally are the strongest substance in the known universe. I mean, those glasses get trashed, right? They must be made out of naquadah or whatever, the Stargate mineral is. But he goes through different permutations and he drops the James Spader act, but he's easily like the link that connects like both of the franchises, so to speak.
Are either of you guys familiar with Graham Hancock?
No.
Nope.
Okay, he's a British writer. I kind of feel like they might have sort of based this character off of Graham Hancock. It would have been quite early in his career, but he was a journalist in the 80s and then got into sort of his books are like Fingerprints of the Gods, Magicians of the Gods. So he's a big proponent of past civilizations, things like not necessarily Atlantis, but well, sure, Atlantis could be an example of that. And he is a real life proponent of pushing the date of the pyramids back to like 10,000 BC or something. So there is actually kind of a real life template for this character. He would have put out Fingerprints of the Gods by this point. So that was a big splash. That was the first one where it's like, nah. He's not saying it's aliens. He's kind of like, oh, an earlier iteration of humanity had done this stuff, which I think that's a really cool vibe. So, and I guess that's pretty much what Daniel Jackson's thing is too. So
he's not saying it's aliens. He's saying it's aliens, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We did a podcast on ancient aliens, and we chose the Japanese one, which turned out to be a mistake because most of those aren't whack enough.
Yeah. Yeah, the problem is the ancient alien stuff is a little bit mainstream in Japan, so the episode didn't seem that ridiculous.
But yeah, the Grant Hancock line, and I think that would also be the Daniel Jackson line, is we are a species with amnesia. As in we've done a whole lot in the past, and something like the pyramids or Göbekli Tepe would be examples of that. But so I guess that's the they call it pseudoscience, but hey, it's interesting, I guess.
My main takeaway from this character is he's just one of those examples of a writer is trying to write a genius, but the writer's not that smart. So there's all these scenes where he's made these incredible breakthroughs, these genius insights, and it's like, how dumb were the people working on this project for 5 years that they didn't figure this out?
Yeah, see,
like none of them thought to look at the stars.
but maybe it takes kind of like that roguish genius, you know.
Yeah, well,
to make
that's clearly
connection,
what they're going for, right? It's just like, come on.
I had this idea because I was thinking about another conversation I had regarding the Stargate. Now, they had the Stargate for, and I don't want to spoil the TV show. There's a reason why the Stargate, wasn't used for a period of time. But when they resurrected the program, in the Cheyenne Mountain facility, one person I was having a conversation with said, why don't they just basically touch like every single symbol and lock those chevrons? And they had the first 6, all they needed the 7th one, and there are only X amount of symbols on the Stargate. Just process of elimination them. I'm like, that's not a bad argument. Maybe they're afraid that if they do lock something could explode. They don't know. There's the happenstance of we don't know what's going to happen. But I always thought it would be interesting if there was like a limited amount of energy in the Stargate itself, like based on the mineral that they find on Abydos. So they had only a handful of attempts where they could try it, and they tried it maybe 2 out of 3 times with the material that they have. And then they needed Daniel Jackson, because if he didn't decipher it on his attempt, that's it. Like the project's done. They're out of gas. It's over. So yeah, if you could lock down the whole point of, okay, we tried 2 out of 8 symbols. Why not try the other 6? Right? Because somewhere in those 6 has got to be the right one. Yep. I mean, that's just logic, right? But if you had 6 symbols left and you only had 2 more attempts, right? The odds now change, and the drama gets heightened. So,
although you do run the risk of unleashing some kind of unknowable Lovecraftian horror as well. So,
risk is our like James T. Kirk says, man, risk is our business. No risk, no reward. Right?
Get Nick Cage on and watch him go crazy again. That's fun. I don't actually, maybe it wasn't Cheyenne Mountain. Oh, no. This is at Fort Meade, Maryland. It's just talking military, the actual Project Stargate, which went from 1978 to 1995 and was an attempt of the military to use remote viewing.
Yeah.
Using the power of your mind, you go into the basement of the Kremlin and do some spying with your mind. So, but they went on with that for 17 years. They went on with this, so kind of amazing. I mean, it's much cooler to have the giant gate with the watery effect to go into, but it's just kind of interesting that there actually is a Stargate project. Yeah, so which is now finished, but that would be the real life equivalent of what they were doing in the at the facility. Just as a little fun fact.
Yeah, it'd be more exciting if it was a real Stargate, not just a bunch of dudes sitting around doing meditation sessions and getting the government to pay them money.
Yeah, but supposedly they're like meditating and going to Mars with their meditations. So
Yeah, I know all about Project Stargate, but it was just a massive scam on Uncle Sam. So more power to them.
Technically, would that be called a pyramid scheme? Hey.
I
Yeah.
so what do y'all think? In the movie, of course, we have aliens from another galaxy in the movie. That's also I was like, whoa, another galaxy. I thought that was the whole point of Atlantis. But again, the movie TV obviously has a little bit of chop. But yeah, what do you think for the pyramids?
I'm never a big fan of theories where aliens built big Earth things because I just find it more romantic and interesting to think that people put in a lot of effort and built those things. And it usually comes from a place of, well, non-whites couldn't have done this, so aliens must have helped them, is I think usually where this thinking comes from, if we're being honest.
I mean, it kind of goes into the whole a different way of looking at fantasy. You know, science fiction is just a different definition of fantasy. So, you know, I like it from just the fantastical elements of it, where you're looking all the way back. Okay, so, you know, full disclosure, I had absolutely zero problem in Highlander 2 when they said Planet Zeist. I had zero problem with it. Not my favorite, not the way I would want to go, but I had no problem with it myself. And I like it just because when you say something like it's so far away, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, some alien decided to usurp the identity of another alien. And then using that alien's entire cultural aesthetic created like one of the most mythological and ancient civilizations of our planet, of planet Earth. So you kind of like start looking at how far back you can trace that lineage, and it just becomes mind-boggling. So like, why not aliens? Now, I completely get you, Luke. Like, you know, Gene Roddenberry never wanted to like basically credit aliens for, you know, or supplanting the alien mythology for what humans are capable of doing. You know, human beings are capable of doing great things and reaching the stars. But at the same time, though, if that were true, then the Vulcans never would have made first contact. We would have gotten to a space all by ourselves, right? So that's the argument that I can lay against that. Like, you know, sure, we had the engine, but it takes the Vulcans, their interference to get us further than what we're capable of doing. But we got there in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's cool. I just think it just, you know, it goes into the whole kind of like in search of, you know, the Leonard Nimoy show all the way back from like the 1970s. And, you know, like, hey, what if our ancestors worked with other worlders and built these ancient structures, you know? So, you know, and it goes into the whole, like, you know, there was like, you know, 3.14 was never invented, you know, there's no mathematics, you know, there's no Pythagorean theorem, there's none of that stuff existed in the era of which mathematics that were needed to make those pyramid structures. So,
or again, they were lost. One theory I've seen is the idea of like kind of a plant substance that would actually, you would make this mixture that would soften rock for a time. And the idea that they would use this to actually form them. And that actually, if they had that technology, it's very analog, very organic. I mean, you know, might be a whole bunch of BS, but I like that kind of idea. Just like, you know, people that we might call primitive had these like really like ingenious methods that we can't even get. Because I think it was about 20 years ago, Mitsubishi tried to build a smaller Great Pyramid and couldn't manage it. So
think about what they had. They had basically a lot of beer, a lot of dudes, and a lot of grease, and a lot of manpower, and a lot of time. I mean, there was nothing to do except for like hump rock, or lift rock, right? And that's it. You know, there's nothing else to do. And if you want to eat that night, you are lifting a lot of rock. That's it. You know, very simple.
Yeah.
This is a little bit off topic, but just off what Matt said, I recently learned a great fact. In like ancient Rome and Greece and Egypt, that sort of area of the world, they had a plant which they used as a contraceptive. And they basically shagged so much that plant went extinct.
Yeah. Wow.
So, yeah. Which is, anytime you see someone try and argue that the idea of sex for pleasure is a modern idea, you just tell them that.
Come on, the Romans had orgies.
Yep.
Did they call that plant B? I'm just saying. Right.
I saw Caligula. Actually, that was funny. One of our regular guests, Andrew, he doesn't drink or anything. So for his 21st birthday, he was like, "I'm renting Caligula because you couldn't rent Caligula unless you were 21. So instead
That's
of going to the
true.
bar, he was like, "We're getting Caligula."
Oh yeah, I think I've told this on the podcast before. For my 18th, I went out and bought Mortal Kombat. I bought some alcohol, some cigarettes. I bought Rambo, and I bought some cutlery
What was the cutlery for?
because I could.
Oh,
But then I
what-
bought an apple pie, so we had something to eat with the cutlery.
So these are all like the verboten things that you're able to get since you were past
Yeah,
18.
and I didn't get asked for ID for any of them, so I could have done it the day before.
There you go.
you have to be 18 to buy cutlery? What?
If you're 18 to buy a knife,
Oh, okay, just a normal. Okay,
But
so
I-
I was thinking they're thinking of silverware, like.
that is what I bought because officially it's any knife.
Oh, okay, you were just flaunting the rules then.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't go and buy like a big Bowie knife or something. I just bought a set of cutlery, but yeah.
We haven't really gotten too deep into the swank design of this movie. I'll just start off with apparently the Stargate was originally painted black, but looked like a tire. So they had to kind of change it. Because I think all the helmets are still pretty like obsidian looking, right? And the Stargate was supposed to match that, but it looked like, like a Michelin ad. So they had to change it.
I think the design
Actually-
is the reason I got so into this film. As a kid, I had a bit of an ancient Egypt phase. And here's just all these cool, like cyborg looking Horuses and Anubises and spaceships and the spear laser beams and stuff. Yeah, that was, for little 5-year-old Luke, that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. So that's why this videotape got watched so much.
I mean, what I love about kind of like where we're at with DVDs and behind the scenes footage and things like that, on the 15th anniversary, which is the one that I have and I watched, their behind the scenes footage and especially their interviews with George Tatopoulos, who was the property manager and designer. He created some of the coolest things. Like if it weren't for him, the death gliders wouldn't look like scarabs. He has this story about how he had this scarab belt buckle made for Ra's costume. And then I think it was maybe it's Mario Casar or one of the producers, maybe it was Roland. He turned it on its side and said, "This would make a great ship." And there it was, the death gliders were born. So if anyone like really wants, like, like if you want to get into like really like the nitty gritty of all that kind of stuff, the behind the scenes of the 15th anniversary collection is really strong, like really well packed, full of like a lot of good stuff, especially design stuff.
I'm just
Sorry,
looking at the glider now, and it is really cool.
Yeah, I definitely love the form-fitting spaceship as well. Just making the pyramid look tiny. So there you go. Maybe humans built the pyramid, but the aliens get to build the really giant, cool thing that goes on top of the pyramid.
Well, I hadn't realized how long there was between this and The Mummy, because it felt like the 90s was all about ancient Egypt, but there was a good 5 years between them.
Yeah. I was just hearing about I think it's the producer Jim Jacks. We already talked about Tombstone, who he did that. He did like I think he might have done a Simple Plan. He just was going around doing like everything in the 90s, but The Mummy is where he sort of caught fire as a producer. So, but yeah, is this the start of the Roland Emmerich thing? I don't recall seeing any of his movies before this, and then after it, that's when we get into like Independence Day and Day After Tomorrow, all that sort of stuff.
There was like a run where it was every 2 years of like Stargate, Independence Day, Godzilla, Day After Tomorrow, where I guess he was on top of the world.
Yeah, because it was him and Michael Bay were like kind of the go-to spots for your late 90s and early 2000s blockbusters,
I guess he was obviously making films before this, but I guess he was just slowly going up and up and up in budget.
That might be the thing here. Like, there, as much cool design and stuff there as there is, it seems a little bit sparse, I guess.
Yeah,
Maybe I don't. Desert.
This film looks great, but in very sporadic moments. So I don't think it was a mega budget movie.
You can also
2 years before this was Universal Soldier. So yeah.
And you can also kind of link like the heavier production sequences with the heavier plot driven sequences. Because when you're they never mention Abydos by name. So when you're on the planet, there's the Pyramid of Giza or the Pyramid of Ra, and then just sand
Yeah.
And then there's, and then there's the village, and then there's more sand, and then the rest of the set piece is Ra's pyramid. So there isn't really like a lot of like practical props or practical buildings that are needed. Is actually to pull a Dune phrase, there was like a lot of desert power that was going on towards the end with the villagers. And open sand makes for great like David Lean style action sequences like Lawrence of Arabia.
Yeah, that's true. I guess. Yeah, especially looking back, once you get his everything, including the kitchen sink movies later, this one comes out looking a little sparse, and he's good, but he's not David Lean, is he? I do like the city a lot though, because I'm I think I've already betrayed. I have the more ancient I can get, the more interested I am. So reading about like ruins of Jericho or something like that's always kind of fascinating. So I really did dig their city design.
So yeah, the scene I really love is the very start of the film, like the absolute beginnings of human civilization when Ra first shows up. Because I've been on a big kick recently of reading about like the earliest cities in like the Near East and stuff like that. So I love seeing. Well, a bit later, Roland Emmerich goes on and does 10,000 BC. So he's obviously also super into very ancient history, but not necessarily accuracy within that.
Unfortunately, with the theatrical version, it doesn't open with the 8,000 years ago.
I think I heard that scene is an extended scene
that was added into the extended version, which again it makes more sense, and it does get repeated later on when they're discussing Ra's character, and when they find like all of the cave paintings, on Abydos, again, which is not mentioned. I just used it as a reference name. So yeah, the theatrical version and the extended cut version, even though most of it's the same 9 minutes of footage, really does kind of change the pace of the movie.
Yeah,
quite a bit. I mean, that's what happened. What was it when we did Legend? I think I watched the longer one and Luke watched the theatrical cut, and Luke and I was like, man, that movie's a bit of a slog, and Luke was a little keener on it because of that. So so sometimes you don't want to add the footage in.
But I think, which way around was it? But one of us had a much better ending than the other in that one.
Oh, geez, I don't remember.
Because I think in like my ending, him and the girl live happily ever after, and then in your ending, it's like, no, I'm a child of the forest, and he just leaves her and goes back to being a child forever.
That's right. So yeah, that totally changes the flavor. Whereas Stargate's added scenes, I guess, do just serve to add some context, which is nice. So
yeah, and I think in this sort of, because if you cut that scene out, it's actually a lot of film before anything supernatural or sci-fi happens. So it's nice to have that scene just to give you a little taste of like, don't worry, cool stuff is coming. You're going to see some archaeology and some math and some science, but don't worry, cool spaceships and stuff are coming later.
I mean, like, unfortunately, I think that there are so many very, very recognizable themes that are going on in Stargate. You have obviously the science fiction theme, you have the desert theme, and you also have the desert archaeology theme. So I remember it was being unfairly kind of compared to, oh, it's just raiders in space, which is not even remotely what Stargate is, but there's a scene in the theatrical trailer where it starts off with 1929 or 29, like archaeological dig at the pyramids of Giza, and all of a sudden you see kind of like that Raiders-esque flavor to it, because Raiders only happens another 10 years later in 1936 or 1941. So yeah, I mean, but it's like it almost kind of feels like Stargate was at the point where people just said, oh, it's that, oh, it's that, oh, it's that, oh, it's that, it's and it never really got the fair shake it deserved. But I think now, since you can go and since there's a whole new generation of fans that can like go and access things for the very first time and not compare it to like the wealth of information that super geeks like us, saw when we were in the theaters, there's no point of comparison. So they're like, oh, this is neat, as opposed to, well, I'll just give, Indiana Jones a space gun, and you got Stargate. I'm like, no, that's not how it is at all.
That really might be how I was coming in the theater in 1994, because I would have seen the preview, I'm sure. And I can definitely see 15-year-old Matt kind of expecting that when going into the theater. So that might have been like, maybe for you as well. Like that's actually what you were expecting when you first saw it. And sometimes when something's a little different than the trailer, it takes you a little bit of time to like make that connect and appreciate what the movie actually is. I love sometimes showing people the original theatrical trailer for 2001: A Space Odyssey, because it's just so wrong. It like doesn't get the tone right at all. It makes it look like an action adventure. It has the narrator guy talking about an adventure in space, and just it's not the movie whatsoever.
The film that I conflate Stargate with because of those opening scenes is always The Fifth Element. Because The Fifth Element opens with that flashback scene to the alien landing in ancient Egypt. Well, not sorry, in like 1920s Egypt. So I think when I was watching this, I was like, oh, as a kid, I definitely got these two confused, because they were both like tapes that were in circulation in my house, and they both open with these flashback scenes. But yeah, then go very different places with them.
Yeah, it's interesting that I guess it's kind of like the thing where I guess, you know, there's like multiple distribution deals or selling scripts. So I wonder if someone's draft just, you know, got spotted by a few different people. So,
or there's just, you know, that there's a phase where people were really thought Egypt was cool. Well, again, this would have been like post Chariot of the Gods, ancient alien stuff is just has seeped into the consciousness a little bit.
Yeah.
So I can imagine a few different scripts for, oh, let's chuck a bit of that in there, give it a bit of a different flavor, make it not Star Trek or Star Wars.
I also remember, this might have been the late 80s, but there was a really, I mean, I guess I feel like it's major because my parents took me there, and it was in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is a good 5-hour drive from Atlanta. But there was a touring Ramses 2 exhibit going around, and that might have done a fair amount to light a few fires on Egypt as well, because it was really grandiose. They had like shipped over like a Colossus-sized statue, and I would appreciate it now. When I was like 8 or 10, I was like, whatever. But
yeah. But I mean, growing up near London, I could go to the British Museum and see all the artifacts that we'd stolen anytime I wanted. So
yeah, so it might be time to give some of that back. But
no, what's really upsetting is I actually went on a family holiday to Egypt when I was like 10 years old. But I was too young to appreciate it. I barely remember anything. And I would love to go and see all of that stuff again now, but it's a bit more difficult these days.
Yeah. Hey Norm, you said you had 3 points you wanted to throw by us, and I maybe you
I think we only got to the first one, that Ra's not a good villain. What are the other two things that would fix this movie?
One of the things that I really wanted to see happen, and I think they were getting close to maybe this secret conversation between Colonel West and Jack O'Neill, because I told this to Matthew offline before we started recording, and it just really didn't make a lot of sense for Colonel O'Neill to be at the very beginning of the film in the state that he was in, and all of a sudden, hi, I'm here. Everything gets passed through me. Nothing gets past my desk. Nothing gets past my eyes or ears. He's there with his great flat top, and then he's on a one-way mission. Why? Right. So, I mean, there's the assumption as to why, but there isn't really kind of like the hard why. And I really wanted to see, there's a scene in the extended edition where Jack O'Neill opens up this doorway and he sees this relic of like a bunch of Horus guards that are preserved, they're fossilized. And then Colonel West comes up behind him and he says, and Jack says to him, he's like, this complicates things now. There's almost like a conversation where I wanted them to have, like, where West says, don't worry, Jack, we'll take care of your family, or we'll take care of your wife. You just need to get done what needs to get done. Right. And Jack's like, don't worry, I will. And that's it. All you really needed is kind of like another reason, like why he's going on this one-way suicide mission. Because I don't think that he was a suicidal character at the beginning. I think he was depressed, and I think that he is traumatic, or he's being traumatized, or was traumatized. But I don't think that gun was meant for him. I think that gun was the gun that killed his son. And it's a reminder of why he's in the situation he's in right now. But I wanted that scene where West is like, you do this and we'll take care of everything else on this end. Good luck, Jack. And that's it, right? It's an unspoken kind of agreement that they had. And it would have made just him showing up make a lot more sense than just, hey guys, I'm here. Right?
I guess here's where, what you watch in tandem, like, kind of does affect things. Cause I do the Twilight Zone, and I just watched Long Live, not Walter Matheson, he's the writer.
Walter Jameson.
Yes, thank you, because you probably just listened to that. But yeah, the guy is like sitting there. He's like, "Yeah, every night I just sit around with a gun for a while and decide if I'm going to pull the trigger." So I watched that and then watched Stargate for when we were about to do this a few weeks ago with a different guest that's not on Norm. But yeah, so I watched those like probably one night and another. So when I see him with the gun at the beginning of Stargate, I'm like thinking the same thing. So I had a different impression, but that's probably because I just watched that Twilight Zone episode.
Well, I mean, that was something that plagued, say, like Martin Riggs's character in Lethal Weapon. You know, that there's a reason why he always had the gun in his hand and he always had that special bullet. And he told it to Murtaugh later on, so that it makes sense for the through line of that character's motivations. But it never made sense to me that that was the motivation for O'Neill. So I just wanted some clarification. And the last idea, let's see. Well, I talked about Rob being the weakest link because he was no villain. I just talked about Jack, and I talked about the Abydos mineral that should have powered the Stargate. That's why they just couldn't wheel of fortune the entire thing until they found the right chevron. But one of the last things I actually wanted to say is that Stargate and Highlander are really similar, you know, when it comes to what happened, you know, from the film to the TV franchise. The films were good. They weren't like, I love Highlander. The films weren't great. They were good. Stargate wasn't great. It was good. But it became so popular that the series afterwards became great. Highlander the series is a great series because it was the way to be able to explore all the world building that could have happened in the movie, but never made it because you just don't have the time. Same thing with Stargate, right? Stargate, obviously, I mean, you had SG-1, which is 10 seasons. You had Atlantis, which is 5 seasons. Universe, which is 1 season or 2.
2.
That's a lot of TV off of one movie. I mean, at least Highlander had, if you want to call them films, you had 1 film and 4 sequels, you know, and 2 of which were linked to the TV show itself. So not bad for a couple of, you know, also ran type of films.
I know there's been rumors for the past 15 years, so you know maybe it's not a thing, but Emmerich has shown some interest in returning, but saying I want to make direct sequels to his movie Stargate without giving too much. He was like, oh, at the end of the 3rd one, this TV show could still happen. But yeah, his idea is just to follow up on this movie. So I don't know if that'd be good or not.
I feel like if there's an audience who are like, oh, I'm up for some Stargate, they were probably all into the TV shows. I don't know what audience there is that's waiting for a sequel just to the. I mean, I would watch it and like it because I am more familiar with the film. But I don't think there's legions of fans who are just waiting for the sequel to the movie, which is the one true canon thing. And I don't think there's a big casual audience who remember this film either. So I don't really know who that film would be for.
And even 1994, I mean, 94 is still close enough. And it's not like people haven't rebooted in shorter spans of time, but it's still too close to, I think, reboot an entire movie franchise based on like one movie. It just, because the television franchise is so good and so like more recent in people's memories, right? So, and they're gonna have to rustle. I mean, like MGM UA owns those rights. They signed and transferred those rights away. So now Amazon has those, buying out the MGM catalog, which is why you can't find Stargate on Netflix anymore. You know, so there's also rumors, and you know, this is well documented online, that there are rumors that Amazon may be looking into investing into its own new Stargate reboot. You know, like I said, I make no claims to that, but if I may plug another website, you know, the gateworld.net, I mean, they're on the up and up. They know their stuff, and there are definite talks that are happening with Amazon and the creators of the Stargate SG-1 series, you know, maybe bringing a new franchise to Amazon because they need more shows, right?
Yeah, because it's Amazon. I was about to say Stargate could, because it's universe ended in what, 2012. It's been 10 years since we had anything new from the Stargate universe. Have they done any like direct to DVD movies in the intervening
there
years?
There was a Stargate movie that basically covered Catherine's story. I think it's Stargate Origins, I think it's called.
I saw something about that, which might be why I'm asking. So
yeah, but I think that's it though. I think it ended pretty much, you know, in total, like with universe.
Prequel web
except for like the
series,
Eagle Moss.
Stargate Origins
Now here's
in
the interesting
2018.
thing. Yeah, so Eagle Moss, which is a a vendor of like, science fiction ships and
They make tiny spaceships. Sorry, I'm trying to fill in for the internet shop.
they're releasing some really, really nice high-ends that are expensive. And I'm just wondering, like, it's got to be something in the conscious that's, you know what, there's going to be a little bit more Stargate coming. Just, yeah.
Yeah, I guess you
Maybe.
could, if you made a tiny Atlantis, it would still be really big. I guess. I don't know. But it is a very basically Stargate does need its next generation to really, I mean, it already has a few series, but it needs its next generation, I think, to really get its tendrils into the zeitgeist is basically a thing. Because Star Trek started to do that through the movies a little bit, but solidified it with next generation. Like Luke, I don't know if I saw I sent you that article that I had seen.
I'd actually seen it already being shared on the Star Trek Facebook groups, but yeah.
It was just what are they doing with this new cast? This is insane.
Yeah. Old newspaper article from just before TNG launches, basically saying all the same things that fans say now every time a new Star Trek comes along.
So the hating is not a new thing, clearly. But I feel with Stargate, I don't think Stargate would get that kind of hate. It's a little more malleable,
Well, and also I think it's been a while and people are just up for some more Stargate. Like that. I mean, if you ignore the internet idiot hate brigade, I think there are enough Star Trek fans who, when Discovery came along, were just like, "Oh, it's been ages. I want more Star Trek," and that's enough. And I suspect there are a lot of Stargate fans who are just like, "I haven't seen any Stargate in 10 years. Give me whatever. I'm up for it. As long as I see a big swirly circle and I see some pyramids, I'm happy."
That is a digital effect, and it's digital in the movie, and then the series
it's the other way around,
starts as analog.
I thought it's the other way around. I think it's practical in the movie.
Oh, okay. Because I was thinking,
the movie really looks like water, and then
yeah.
Oh, yeah. A CGI
that's right.
blue.
Maybe they went CGI for the TV show and eventually went back to the practical effect. I know that TV show made some kind of switch on the Stargate effect at some point.
I just had a thought: if they were making another set of Stargate movies now, a Stargate series now, they should base it on like South American, Aztec, and Mayan and Inca pyramids. That would be a cool aesthetic that hasn't been explored enough.
I mean, they did do an episode in SG1 where it was kind of like linked to the whole crystal skull mythology of like the Mayans and the Aztecs. So
I hope they pulled it off better in Andy Jones.
They have roots in that storytelling. And then, I mean, here's the thing. My internet's spotty, guys. I'm really sorry.
No, I knew that might happen coming in. So sorry for our listeners. Maybe I'll see if I can get my scissors a little bit on those parts.
Yeah, might have to actually Matt might have to do some editing for once this week.
Oh my God. But that's not an issue. So how does this single movie stand? Obviously, it was enough to begat an entire franchise, which is, we've been talking about the franchise for the past 10 minutes, but if the film were just, you compared it directly to Highlander, and I kind of feel like the Highlander is a better film, maybe because Stargate pretty much walks the Hollywood beat by beat, where the Highlander, being kind of a fake Hollywood movie, has just a little bit of more weirdness about it, which I think helps it as a viewing experience.
I think this film is still a really fun watch. And I think its aesthetic and its effects really stand up. But I don't think anyone is going to come out of this film being like, "Oh, that was the best thing I've ever seen. That was a masterpiece." But I also don't think anyone's going to come out of this film being like, "Oh, that was a boring slog. Why did I watch that?" It's just, yeah, if you go in knowing, okay, I want to see a little bit of spaceships, I want to see a bit of pyramids, I want that kind of soundtrack, yeah, you'll be happy.
Okay. I would say because I can come out of the Highlander and say, yes, that is the best thing I've seen, where immortals chop off each other's heads and lightning goes all over the place. So it's I guess it's treading on a more specific concept than Stargate in some ways.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I guess, how some directors, they're better when they've got a bit of something limiting them, and like they have to get creative. I think Emmerich's the opposite. He does better when he's allowed to just go absolutely insane because he's got all the budget in the world.
And you're someone that even is, I mean, I don't hate the movie, but yeah, you're fine with the late 90s Godzilla as long as we refer to him as Zilla, right?
Yeah. If we pretend that it's a remake of like the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms or whatever, instead of putting it into the Godzilla canon, then yeah, I like it as a monster movie.
What is the what's the British monster movie? There's a British 60s monster movie, isn't there?
I'm not sure what you're referring to, but probably.
Yeah, because you know, a few other countries that I'll get back to you. There's definitely a British monster movie. So from the 60s.
Yeah, I'm sure, but yeah, I don't know what one you're referring to.
There's also a North Korean monster movie, which
yeah, I do want to see that.
Gotta watch that one. Norm, I don't know how much we have or have you at the moment, but how do you want to compare this one as a just as a film, as a single film? How does this one hold up for you?
Well, it's just entertaining, and sometimes that's all it really needs to be. You know, I agree with you, Luke. It's like it's not gonna like set anyone's expectations on fire. It has time travel in a way, it has space travel in a way, it has pyramids in a way, it has history in a way. It doesn't really do any one thing great. It just it does a bunch of like interesting things very mediocrely with maybe a hint of greatness like every once in a while. And I really do think that it just has it all boils down to there are some very charming characters. It has great talent in it. I mean, let's be honest. You know, you have James Spader, you have Kurt Russell, you know, anchoring the movie. I mean, those are two very good powerhouse actors. The supporting cast is actually very good. I'm a big fan of John Deal. I like him, you know, as Kowalski, who we get to see later on in SG-1. Not John Deal though, but it's a fun, memorable, up to a point movie where if you have a couple hours on a lazy, rainy day, watch it. It's fun, right? But you're not going to like put it in a pantheon of any movies anytime soon, which is too bad because it could have been. That's the thing, is that there's a lot of potential that's left on the cutting room floor or on the table. And compared to Highlander, it had a very specific look. You know, Russell Mulcahy had a very specific desire to, you know, make this film look a certain way. And it also had Queen behind it, right? A lot of people remember Highlander just because of the title song, you know? So they're like, oh, is that the movie with the Queen song in it? Yeah, right? Yeah. Now, to be fair,
any movie could use Queen. So
David Arnold's probably the greatest thing that ever came out of Stargate, right? His theme is phenomenal, which they used in SG-1 as their opening theme too. So if you haven't listened to the David Arnold soundtrack or score for Stargate, I highly recommend it. It's amazing.
Apparently this was his first US job.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that's awesome.
And he did it in a hotel room. You know, he composed in a hotel room. And he went on to do some greater things, but yeah, he's just kind of like one of those guys where, I mean, if you want to have like these really interesting soundtracks or scores, like put him alongside, say, Craig Safin's The Last Starfighter, and when James Horner was doing like interesting stuff like Krull, you know, like this is before like James Horner became really big and did Titanic and Braveheart and et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, like that's a really nice little trilogy of scores, you know, like kind of B-movie sounding kind of scores. And it's fun, you know, it has a great throwback kind of feel to it, you know.
I guess the one thing that's why it was like, let's specify the movie, because it is the first time that it begat the TV show that really rolled. Because I'm thinking, what were the previous science fiction things where you have the movie then the TV show? Planet of the Apes, not a particularly good show, especially the live action one. Logan's Run, not a particularly good show. I mean, Battlestar, I guess you could say, but it was always a TV show.
It was a TV show, and they pretended it was a movie.
Yeah. So, and that pulled it off. But yeah, that's the same beast. So, you know, Stargate did kind of pull off a new trick, at least. Any other big points we want to throw out on this one?
I'd forgotten about them until Norm brought them up. But the other soldier characters that go with them onto the planet, like.
They're pretty Transformers.
Yeah, but they're not coded as likable. Like, they're all really mean to Daniel all the time.
Especially French Stewart's character, Ferretti. He is just a total not good guy.
Like, and they're really, like, unproductively bullying the guy who can get them home.
Well, the guy that could get them home is, like, playing with alien beasts as well. So that
Yeah.
doesn't seem that sharp.
But it's a real. I don't think any film made post 9/11 would treat its soldiers that badly. You can't depict the soldiers as anything other than, especially in something this like mainstream. And if you're making an interesting film about what war does to people, then yeah, maybe. But in just like a blockbuster Hollywood piece like this, you've got to depict the boys as perfect angels these days.
And there was like a little bit of a subtext of, these are the alpha males like pushing around the nerd with glasses. I mean, they literally kick sand in his face.
Yeah.
Right. The 98-pound weakling. Right.
Yes, definitely had Charles Atlas on the mind when that happened.
Yeah. There's a lot of allegorical, subtext to the movie. But at the same time, though, that's kind of stuff that doesn't appear until, you watch it several times over or get into conversations like we're having right now. And that's just to try and, to redeem what is general, like I said, it's a very vanilla film. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like nothing has to be earth shattering. Nothing have to be, end of the world. You don't have to, there's no real galactic ending event that's happening in Stargate. A bunch of good guys have to take out a bad guy because sometimes that's good enough, right? It's sometimes and it really just falls short just because I said earlier, I just think the villain is just really, really ineffectual. It's just there's nothing that Ra does. And this is Ra, right? Everyone knows the name Ra from Egyptian mythology. So yeah, it's just it's a science fiction blockbuster that could have been way better than it was, but it was good enough to be able to do what it did, which is basically launch a 2 decades long, hundreds of episodes long franchise, which, hey, I'll take it. Right.
I have one more very important question. Would you be the first to eat the alien meat? Luke,
I'd do it in a second.
Okay, you're in a second. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait for you to go first.
I'm Filipino. I'm pretty much eat anything.
Now, Luke, I don't know what your answer is because we are in Japan and sometimes we get served whale sperm.
Yeah, I would, but the problem is it looked kind of like a bug and it looked like it would taste like seafood. I don't like seafood. But yeah, I do anything once.
Yeah.
It reminded me of the scene from in Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom where they cut open that snake and it was like Snake Surprise. And all the eels came out of it.
There was I saw something on Japanese TV and the Japanese TV can be extremely stupid where they were sending out the stereotype schoolgirl with the thick eyebrows played by someone who was not a schoolgirl, but that was her shtick, and to go eat the snake ramen. So I wouldn't try the snake ramen. I'm getting pickier as I get older for some reason though. So maybe 20-year-old Matt would eat the snake ramen.
Ultimately though, I think we can say at least Stargate is better than Gods of Egypt.
Okay, yeah, sure. I haven't seen Gods of Egypt, but I'll agree with you.
Don't.
That is Ridley Scott too. That's such a shame. Okay.
Yeah.
Where they transform into the weird CGI Power Rangers every time they have a fight.
Right. And there's some top talent, like actor talent in that movie, isn't there?
Yeah. There's some big actor talent being wasted in that movie.
Yeah, that was like one of those kind of like somebody lost a big bet kind of movies. Now you got to make my film.
Yeah.
Right. It's like a poker game, right? It's like, okay, I don't have any money right now, but how about the script? I'll put the script on there, right? Okay, sure.
I guess we'll wheel this one in the house then. Norm, can you tell folks a little bit about what you do in the podcasting realm and where to find you?
Okay, so I am a co-host of Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. It's a podcast where we essentially say every single episode that we take a look at the morals, meanings, and messages of Star Trek every episode and try to see if it withstands the test of time. John Champion and I have been doing it for 3 years together, but the podcast in and of itself has been going on for a little over 10 years. And right now we are in the middle of, or actually closing in on the end of season 1 of Voyager, since Voyager is only 15 episodes for its first season. So we're really looking forward to that. We just recently did an interview with David C. Fine and Darren Doctorman, the two gentlemen who are responsible for the 4K restoration of the motion picture. which you can see on Paramount Plus, and then you can also see on the big screen in your Fathom events. So make sure that you look out for that. But yeah, that's where you can usually find me. And then you can also find me on our, am I allowed to plug our Patreon?
Oh, yeah, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Okay. So Mission Log also has a Patreon subscription service where you can subscribe for as little as $1 a month. And then that gives you access to our Discord, where we have a bunch of different conversations and threads going on, ranging from all different types of science fiction to all different types of fandoms to especially food, which we love sharing pictures of, music, pretty much everything in between. So please check us out at patreon.com/missionlog.
And yeah, I'm on that one. That's why I knew to wear a Hawaiian shirt today.
Yeah, sadly, bad news as of this recording. 2 days ago, before this recording, Magnum PI on CBS has been canceled as of season 4. There will be no season 5. I am devastated about that because I love the classic series and I love the new series. And hopefully it'll get picked up by some other network with bigger pockets than CBS wants to shell out, or Universal. Licensing is so strange and so interesting nowadays.
I took a bath last night and then went out to shave after. And right as I was shaving, I was like, "Oh, I should have kept the stash for this recording." But it wouldn't. It wouldn't have had anything like a Selleck lusciousness to it. So maybe it's best that I did shave. No, we know what happens when you go with the stash, Luke.
Yeah, I know. It was like a sex pest. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can find it on Twitter at MLSFS144. Me and Matt do other podcasts. You can find all of our podcasts by going to patreon.com/Podcastio. Even if you don't want to throw us any money, that's a good place to find links to all of our shows.
What was your mispronunciation there? Podscadius?
Yeah, Podscatius. That's different. That's the podcast I do with my German friend.
Ouch. Okay. Well, Norm, thanks for joining us as always. And I don't know, Luke, you want to shove everyone through the portal today?
Yeah, I was going to try and do like one of those weird, deep, guttural, gowled voices, but I don't think I can do it.
No, it's like when I do the Cookie Monster in my classes, and then I have to do the Cookie Monster for 10 minutes, and then I lose my voice. That's always so. I'll just try my best with, I don't know what to say though.
Just say "go away."
Go away. Let's see if I can do it Bill Hicks style. There we go.
Zoom didn't like that.
No. Well, I don't think Bill Hicks's crowds liked it either. So they go around doing a Satan voice all the time. Okay. Again, though, thanks for coming in, and I'm gonna go catch a train before too long and actually end up in the same room as Luke.
Yeah, I'll see you in a couple hours.
So okay. We'll catch you another time then. Thanks.
So guys, I hope the Zoom didn't cause you too many problems. And where do you want me to send the local recording if you need it?
Oh, I think you can send it through the Discord actually.
Okay.
I think that's what Mike did when I recorded with him a little while back. I think he just sent to me a link through. Google Drive link through there will be fine. But,
okay.
There were only 1 or 2 moments where we lost you on the Zoom, so hopefully Matt can just slide in your local on those 2 spots, and we should be pretty easy.
Yeah, there's a few.
Go ahead.
There are a few spots where we just kept rambling. So, because like as I said, from listening to your Patreon, I already knew that would probably happen a few times, so I was kind of like prepared for it. But yeah, there's 1 or 2 spots I'll probably do a little trimming. So
okay. All right, I'll link you a link to the drive with this file, and then guys, thanks for having. This is great. This is so much fun. Right? Yeah. I mean, it's Stargate. No one gets mad, or sideways about Stargate. It's Stargate, right?
Yeah, it's just a bit of fun.
Yeah, that's all it is, man.
Oh, actually, no, I can tell you who gets mad at Stargate. There was a period where Doctor Who fans were mad at Stargate because all the Stargate fans were pushing for SG-1 to get the Guinness World Record for longest running sci-fi series.
Oh, well.
But technically it's Doctor Who. But because Doctor Who looks like 20 different TV shows, whereas SG-1 is very clearly the same show, they managed to get the record for SG-1.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, they just announced the new Who, didn't they?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's cool. Although honestly, I haven't really been. Well, here's what happened. I watched the Matt Smith one, like, fastidiously, right? And then right when they did the change, my daughter was into Legos, and I got a deal. So I got the Lego TARDIS.
Mm.
I had to send it
Nice.
to my parent. Well, this is where the heartbreak comes in, because I had to send it to
Oh.
my parents' place, and they came, but it turned out it's actually really big. So I still don't have my
Ah.
TARDIS 6 years later. And my daughter doesn't want to make Legos anymore. She's 12.
Ah,
She'll come back around.
Well, she's going to be a samurai in 2 years' time, so that's cool. I'll have a samurai daughter because she joined
hope
the
she-
kendo club at school. So
I hope she enjoys that. I mean, Kendo's great.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a
yeah,
lot
yeah.
of fun.
So I mean, I don't know anything about it, but I'm like, that's cool because it was badass. The dude's like, here's my business card. I'm a samurai. I'll show that to you, Luke, later.
You showed it to me on Zoom the other day.
Oh, okay, yeah. But I was like, yeah, I want my business card to say samurai. So
All right.
okay, have a good one. I am going to stop the recording.
Yeah, I got to head to the gym. So later.
Yeah.